We'll get right into it, guys. I think the first and most important topic of the segment is knowing the comparison, or the difference, if you will, of the advertised price and the out-the-door price. Dalton, what do you have to add to that?
I mean, really, what is advertised price versus out-the-door price? I mean, advertised price would be basically when I show up to look at a camper, dealer A is showing $10,000 for that camper, and that is their advertised sticker on the camper that you show up, and that's what grabs your attention as a customer. That's what the camper price is. Whereas your out the door price is that camper, the $10,000 plus whatever their fees are, plus sales tax for whatever state, location, county, sometimes if that applies to you. That's camper fees and taxes. That's out the door price. So,
well, and there's also a lot of cost associated to doing business in this industry, right? And we're going to just kind of go a little itemized line, not so much of which one being more important than the other one, but just trying to touch base on all of them that we see people be confused of, or again can be a shock to them when they go to arrive to pick up said camper. So I would say the first and most important one to determine what your advertised price is and what you're actually paying out the door, or financing for that matter, will be the hidden fees. A couple that come to mind, and then we'll kind of dive into each one of those specifically. And if you've purchased a camper, I'm sure you've seen some of these on your purchase agreement, and you're probably going to understand a little bit more why you shouldn't have been subject to those, and what to do to avoid that from happening to you again. And those that are just entering this industry, take these lessons that other people have learned the hard way and apply them to your purchase, and make sure you're getting the best deal. But we'll jump right in. The two biggest ones that I see on every person's purchase agreement almost, PDI, otherwise known as preparation. That is simply the process of going through the camper, testing all of the systems, making sure everything's in working order before it goes to the customer. Another one is freight. Everyone pays freight, guys. It is what it is. I'm sure you've been passed on a highway by a semi carrying 10 cars, right? That dealership that's receiving those 10 vehicles gets to delegate that transportation fee across 10 units, whereas in the RV industry, it's very different. Each one of these RVs is individually transported, and the cost of doing so, especially depending on the region, could be astronomical. And if that were to be a surprise when you walk in, again, we'll go over that here soon, but
PDI, pre-delivery inspection. So you hit on that one a little bit. And part of the reason that's a hidden fee, or some dealers require it and some don't. Could you explain that one a little bit better? You and I were talking about it a little bit before the show. RV wholesalers, we don't require that fee. And why do some? Why do some don't? Why do some do?
Well, of course. Well, it's greed. To answer that as simple as I can, it's greed. When you are buying a new RV, every dealership they're supposed to test all the functions, all the features, make sure water's running through the camper, make sure the hot water heater lights, make sure that everything is tested. We're essentially camping in it for a couple hours, give or take, other than sleeping in it, of course, to make sure that everything is in working order. The problem with it being a hidden fee, or something that you are going to be subject to, is that, guys, if I find anything wrong with this camper, the manufacturer pays me to fix these things, right? I mean, so for me to say you owe me $1,500 for this process is simply double dipping. It's simply saying, and that's even if they did prep the camper. I do know of some dealerships that have been caught not doing so. They just charge you the fee and get you out the door. But for those that are still prepping it correctly, they're getting a huge kickback from the manufacturer that built it, or had those flaws from the manufacturer, floor line, and then they're getting that from the customer as well. You're not supposed to be subject to that, guys. It's something that is done behind the scenes. You're buying a new camper. But why we're making it a topic of conversation is because dealerships, once you get into the closing room, and you question that because it wasn't part of the negotiation process, it wasn't part of that price that you were being told over the phone or seeing online, they almost make it seem like it's your fault, right?
Because it was an advertised price. They got you in the door with the advertised price, and now their out the door price is different.
Well, but this one specifically too, I've actually heard stories from customers saying that the salesman or the finance manager, whatever, they would put it back on the customer. They would say, well, what do you want your new camper to have leaks? What do you not want us to go through? Do you want a broken? You're buying a brand new camper. It better not leak. It better not have issues, right? These are. It's almost like a scare tactic to make you subject to these fees. That is why I wanted to make it a point of conversation for this week's podcast, is simply to say that you should not be subject to them. And the second that you use this information and apply it towards your purchase, and have knowledge behind that as to what it is, why you should not be subject to it, and then you threaten to walk out the door, I promise you that dealership will remove that itemized fee, right?
Or just not even deal with the dealership that was dishonest with you in the first place.
Well, that's what I would prefer them to do, right?
Yeah.
If they were willing to take advantage of you during the sale, I just tell those people, imagine what your experience after the fact would be when you need them to take care of your camper, when you need them for service and warranty work. Unfortunately, I'm not going to speak for anyone, but that's what I would personally do. We had an agreed a price over the phone. I signed my name to something. I show up, and now is when I'm being told about these things? Absolutely not. I'm sorry. There's too many other people to buy an RV from that would be happily willing to earn my business and more transparent during that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another good one, like I touched base with, is freight.
Yeah.
Anything you have, Dad, with the freight?
Freight is kind of a mandatory thing, unfortunately, just because it costs money, as everybody knows, with eggs, milk, I mean, just everything that you consume on a daily basis. It costs money to ship those things throughout the country. So, 90% of campers are made in Indiana, where the Forest River factory is, where most of the factories are. So it costs money to ship things to the dealerships. And just like Josh had mentioned with a car, they put 15 cars on a tractor trailer and they ship it, and they can mitigate that cost to all those cars at once. Whereas a trailer, they put it on the back of on a truck and they ship them one at a time. So if you're in Ohio, like we are, that cost is small. Whereas if you're in Florida or California, that cost is much higher. So some dealerships will work it directly into their advertised price. So now instead of $10,000, that camper will be $15,000, because it costs $5,000 to ship that camper to California. And some will just say, well, yeah, it costs, our advertised price is $10,000, but it costs us $5,000 to ship it out to California. So you're going to have to pay that, or we'll just sell it to the next person down the road that wants it.
And I mean, unfortunately, like, that is a cost of doing business. That is one of these many things we'll go over that you will be subject to. What I've noticed, though, the only thing I'll add to that is dealers, I don't want to say that they've gotten smart by any means, but if you're in Texas or Florida, for just example, and it costs you, I mean, gas prices now, let's not even talk about it, that's all I'll say, but gas prices today, to transport a camper from the same place we get it and go 1,000 miles south or 1,500 miles west, whatever it is, their cost of doing business is astronomically higher. But to get you from going to Ohio to purchase and save that money, they're going to not include that in their advertised price. That's what used to be. About 5 to 10 years ago, it would just be rolled into their asking price of the RV so that you would have a better idea. Now, what we're hearing from customers is that these, again, I just took a call from a guy in Texas like 2 weeks ago. Why would I drive to Ohio? I can save $10,000 here. It ended up being an apples to apples unit. We both had them in stock. All I could do is just apply common sense and try to inform this gentleman the cost of doing business, the difference, everything that is included, in that it would be physically impossible for that dealership to compete. Unless it's a used one, unless it's 3 years old, unless it has damages, unless there's some sort of factor that you do not want to be subject to, it would be impossible for him to compete. That is why, so what I'm seeing now is that freight is now a hidden fee. And when you question it, and this is from a customer, they will ask, I mean, what do you think, these just show up on a magic carpet, right? I mean, do you think that they just fly here? They're driven individually. So you're going to pay that no matter where you go, Mr. and Mrs. X, Y, and Z. You're going to pay that no matter where you go. It doesn't matter where you buy an RV. They want you to be subject to these things, but they know you're not going to go into the door if all of these things were already in their asking price. That is why we want to make them transparent, and we want to give you the tools to be able to negotiate and combat those so that you can get the best deal, period. So
I do want to pause for a second and talk about the term hidden fees, because some dealerships hide them and don't tell you until you're at the door ready to pick up, and that's where they would be hidden fees, whereas some dealerships will tell you, this is our fees up the front. Our fees cost X amount of dollars. They won't change, and if they do change, it will give you your money back. It's a refundable deposit. And that's...
I was getting ready to say that there's another part of the segment I wanted to talk about of just how to get the out-the-door price. And but there a couple other fees I wanted to touch base on. Environmental fees. That's a funny one. Tire replacement. That's even more comical. Two stories I'll just tell real quick. Environmental coatings, for anyone that's ever purchased a new boat, there is such thing as a coating because it's going into the body of water of living organisms, right? So it's going to help deter the building materials and things that are toxic from affecting the wildlife. That doesn't exist in this industry, but unfortunately, like the dealers that sell boats and campers, they're getting away with that. I've seen as much as $2,900, and you don't question it because it's this is our state regulation, or this is mandatory per the state. It's really not. It does not exist in this industry. You should not be subject to that. Now, you may not come across that one all the time, as well as the tire replacement. I literally had a customer last year was comparing myself and a gentleman from Florida. Mine was in stock, his was ordered, and after the 6 months that the gentleman had waited, due to all of the supply chain issues and things like that, when he showed up to pick it up, that was one of on top of all of the other fees we've gone over that I warned him about, the tire replacement. They literally told this guy that the tires are no good once they come from Indiana to Florida. So he was being charged $1,299 for a new set of tires. I promise you, I will bet any amount of money that the tires were never replaced. Those are the tires that came from Indiana that were specifically put on that camper from on the factory line. So, guys, don't be subject to these things. That's the point we're trying to get across. Use this video. Use the research and information we're giving you. to do your own research and make sure you're getting the best deal. A couple other ones though that would be mandatory, things that are state regulated, federally regulated, things like that. Would you touch base on a couple of those things?
Yeah, so title fee is a big one. It costs money. When the camper comes from the manufacturer, it comes with a certificate of origin, if I'm correct. Right. And it costs money for the state or for the dealership and the state to process that into a title. So a title fee is a common one that is mandatory, set by the state and the federal government.
Did you say like average cost of that?
I believe it's $45 for the state of Ohio.
Okay, cool.
And that is state regulated. So if you're in the state of Ohio and you go to a dealership and they're like, yeah, we have a title fee of $90, well, that's double what the state regulates. So why would you pay double what the state regulates? Only pay the $45.
And I do know in some states it may be, I think New Jersey is closer to like $600, right? At least, again, from my experience. At least shop around like the two dealers and see what their fees are. We've just seen inflation on those simply because it's forced regardless. So are the other ones that we've already covered. They're trying to do everything they can to get the money out of your pocket.
Or worse, just call the state title department and ask them how much is a title fee.
Absolutely.
Another one's documentation fee. It costs money to get the camper to the dealership and process that documentation because there's warranties that go in your name. There's the title, which is another one. They have to pay those people. So ask how much the documentation fee is because there is a fee towards that. They do have to pay those people. And normally those are set pretty standard to transfer all the warranty stuff into your name. So just ask how much it is. And if you get something that's like $1,500 or something like that, that's normally outrageous.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just ask those fees, and normally they won't hide those things. But if they do, obviously that's a giant red flag for you as a customer. Like, why won't you tell me what your fees are? If you're hiding them from me, then obviously you're not proud of them, and if you're not proud of them, then something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I would say the last thing that you will see on the bill of sale that you will be subject to, sales tax, unless you're one of those lucky folks that have an LLC or a home base in Montana. Sales tax is unavoidable. Death and taxes, those are the two certain things in this lifetime. So And they're not going to inflate those. It's a percentage, but all of the other things that we've already gone over, if prep is $1,500, if freight is $5,000, if environmental coating fees is $1,200, tire replacement's $1,200, dock, title, you're paying sales tax on all of those things. So though they can't inflate it, the dollar amounts you're paying to the state and feds are absolutely inflated. We don't want to give them any more of our hard-earned dollars than what they already take from us on a day-to-day basis. So just do your research. Please understand that there are fees you're going to be subject to and fees that you should not.